I'm Sandoval Moshenberg, an attorney with Murray Osorio. Today we're going to discuss the fear of mass deportations since Trump was elected president on a campaign promise of mass deportations. What does that mean? Who needs to worry and what can they do to protect themselves in advance? What should you do if you're walking down the street or just in your car and all of a sudden you find yourself face to face with an ICE officer? Well, it's very worrisome, but there are certain things that you can do to protect yourself, and that's what we're going to go over today. Since Donald Trump was elected president, many immigrants are scared of the mass deportations that he promised during his campaign. These fears have really become more concrete with two of the very first appointments that he named to his new government, Thomas Homan and Stephen Miller, who were two of the architects of his immigration policy during his first presidency, and who are two of the strongest anti-immigrant voices involved in the creation of Project 2025. We don't know a lot of details about the mass deportation plans, but there are a few things that they have announced. One of the things we saw when Trump was last president was an immediate increase in ICE raids, both large and small. And this is one of the things that has been promised in the new administration, is a resumption of worksite raids, which was really pretty much came to an end under the Biden administration. Worksite raids are when ICE, often with the assistance of local or state police, come to a particular job site and they go through person by person. They ask everyone, if they have papers, if they have legal immigration status, if they have a work permit. And anyone who says no essentially gets the handcuffs slapped on them and put in the back of the van, taken to ICE detention for processing. This is pretty terrifying because, you could just be at your job thinking nothing of it. And this happens at work sites large and small. Under the first Trump administration, it happened at, giant meat packing plants in Iowa, where they arrested more than 200 people in a day. And it happened in small restaurants in Falls Church, where they picked up 4 or 5 people out of the kitchen. We also saw an increase in what I called micro raids, where they would come maybe to a 7-Eleven where day laborers were hanging out in front, maybe to an apartment complex where they were looking for one particular person, but they would arrest 12 individuals simply for not having legal status. This is scary, right? It's, of course, undocumented people always have a knowledge that, without legal immigration status in the United States, at any moment something bad could happen. But at least when there are prosecutorial discretion policies in place and priorities memos in place, like there have been under the Biden administration, you have at least some level of assurance that if you don't do anything wrong, hopefully nothing bad will happen to you. Whereas under a policy of mass deportation and a policy of ICE raids, you can get arrested by ICE just for being in the wrong place at the wrong time. Just because ICE is coming to look for someone who works at the same place as you, or coming to look for someone who lives at the apartment next door to you. So what can we do to prepare ourselves for this possibility? Well, the first thing to understand is that within the undocumented community at large, there's over 1 million people who already have a final deportation order. This could be because they were actually deported and they returned, maybe from the interior of the United States, or maybe what's called an expedited removal, or one of these border deportations. They were, trying to cross the border, they were deported back to their home country, and then they crossed again. Or it could be because they were given a court date in the United States, they never showed up to that court date, and they were ordered deported in their absence. In the 16 years that I've been practicing immigration law, I've talked to hundreds and hundreds of people who didn't even know that they had a deportation order against them until I was able to show them that. This is really important to understand about yourself, because if you have a deportation order, whether that order has never been carried out or whether that order was already carried out and then you returned, if ICE arrests you, you can be deported as quickly as it takes them to line up a flight. It can be in a matter of a week, depending on what country you're from. You don't have the right to go before a judge, because supposedly you already went before a judge. And you don't have the right to get out on bond because you've already got a deportation order. So the number one thing that you need to do is really understand your own immigration history to figure out whether you might have a prior deportation order or not. An immigration lawyer can help you pull your files from Border Patrol, do what's called a FOIA request, a Freedom of Information Act request, can look up your case by a number, which is your case number, to figure out whether you have a prior deportation order. And if you you do, you need to get started immediately on pulling together evidence and legal arguments for why that deportation order should be reopened. If you can reopen your case, then you've got a shot. But if you wait until you're already, arrested by ICE and sitting in a detention center in Louisiana or South Texas, that's oftentimes going to be too late to really do the work necessary and pull together the evidence necessary to file a compelling motion before an immigration judge to reopen that order and let you have an active case again. Long story short, it's very important for undocumented immigrants to figure out if they're at heightened risk for immediate deportation by determining whether or not they already have a deportation order. Now, what about the folks who don't have a deportation order, who've really had no contact whatsoever with ICE, with USCIS, with Border Patrol at any time during their entry into this country or during their stay in this country? It's very important not to wait until you're already in the backseat of an ICE van before you start looking at your legal options. You want to see if there's a type of legal status that you can apply for before it's too late. For example, there are many types of legal immigration statuses that have a fairly significant processing time, but even having an application pending can be the difference between being picked up by ICE or them deciding to leave you alone, on any particular morning. So for example, victims of violent crimes who've cooperated with law enforcement in reporting the victimization can apply for something called a U visa. A U visa has a very long processing time, many, many years. But even having filed an application can at least put you in a different position from someone who's never filed any type of application before, and could be what is necessary for ICE to decide to just leave you alone and focus on someone else. If you have a long pending application, there are things that an immigration attorney can do to bring that application to the front of the line and try to get it adjudicated more quickly. For example, expedite requests or filing a writ of mandamus. So there are definitely options that it's worth having a consultation with an immigration attorney to look into sooner rather than later. And then finally, you really want to have the name and number of an immigration attorney and have a file open in their office so that, if worse comes to worse and something does happen, at least you know who to call. At least someone's already got your basic information down on file. They've already done some sort of initial research into your case so that your family members are not scrambling to figure out who they're going to call in the event that you're detained by ICE. Finally, the last thing I always remind people is that if you do find yourself face to face with an ICE officer, much by surprise, you have the right to remain silent, and it's important to exercise that right. You're not going to talk your way out of this situation. Trust me, it's much better to say, very respectfully, very politely, but just say, you know what, I'm going to exercise my right to remain silent. I choose not to answer your questions. Am I free to go? Those are sort of the magic words, right to remain silent and am I free to go? Interestingly, simply biting your tongue and not saying anything is not a direct invocation of your right to remain silent under the law and under the Constitution of the United States. It's sort of funny, it's ironic, you have to speak words in order to exercise your right to remain silent. But yeah, those are the words you have to say. I choose to remain silent. I have the right to remain silent. I'm exercising my right to remain silent, anything like that. Maybe not a magic bullet, right? It may not save you from actually being picked up by ICE, but it can create possible legal defenses in your court case if they arrest you without any legal cause. If you'd like to learn more about new or potential immigration policies following the recent change in administration, contact us today for personalized legal advice. Be sure to check out our other videos on immigration law and policy, and subscribe to stay updated. Follow us on social media for more updates. Our contact information is in the description box below. Thanks.